Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the best Death Knight decks that you can play. Now that Unholy Death Knight got some buffs, Renathal was nerfed, some balance changes have been made to the game and much of the Lich King proper has been launched with Death Knight as an actually playable class. That doesn't mean that all Death Knight variants are playable though. Actually, Death Knight only has one really good deck right now. Although there are still things that could be refined with the others, I will discuss them as we go. So only one of them is also properly refined at the moment. Anyway, we'll start with the weakest ones and we'll proceed to the stronger ones. And first one, Unholy. What is the best Unholy deck? I have two candidates for Unholy, and the first candidate is this Aggro Unholy deck. And Aggro Unholy, it's basically a Hawkstrider Rancher deck. You try to get your Rancher, you try to get Rancher into Swarm Guard especially, and then you have Grave Strength, which is your Bloodlust card. So then you have stuff on the board, your opponent is unable to remove all of that, and then you can Bloodlust and win some games. This deck is very low curve, already stops at 5 mana with Army of the Dead, but it's kind of mediocre. Sometimes it can win games, but other times it just whimpers off and just doesn't have enough strength to carry throughout the game. And also some of the card choices are pretty weak. It's trying to use all of the 1-cost undeads, but 1-cost undeads, I mean stuff like Banshee and Foul Egg, are actually pretty weak. And there are some good 1-drop undeads as well that can support the game plan, like Arms Dealer and Skeletal Sidekick, and of course the Phenomenal Bodybagger. But there are still too many weak cards for this archetype to properly shine. We might be able to see a pure aggro unholy deck maybe after the mini set, maybe after the next expansion, but right now, with stuff like Banshee, Foul Egg, Bone Digger Geist, there's just too much baggage that you have to carry when trying to do this, and it just doesn't work properly. Most of all, it is leaving out too much power, because by making the deck a little bit slower, this is another variant of the Unholy deck, especially Lord Marrowgar. Lord Marrowgar is actually a huge win condition. This deck still has some of those same features. It still has Hawkstrider Ranchers, it still has Nerubian Swarm Guards, it still has Grave Strength, but Lord Marrowgar, leaving Lord Marrowgar out of the more aggro version is just clearly a mistake. Lord Marrowgar, Astral Bloodstone are phenomenal cards, and you do need them in Unholy. Then again, this one is leaving out some of the other good, like the Arms Dealer and Skeletal Sidekick, so this one is missing out on some of the good 1-drops. This one is using Blade Grain quite effectively, another card is missing from the first variant. So as you can see, these have not been properly fine-tuned, and the real answer to optimal Unholy performance lies somewhere between these two decks. And then we have Blood Death Knight. Blood Death Knight, the one that I built for theory crafting, is still actually one of the best performing Blood Death Knight decks and one of the only ones that's still able to hit 50% win rate. But it is not the best Blood Death Knight deck anymore because the meta has evolved a little bit and it needs to be teched, and I don't think any Blood Death Knight decks have been properly teched yet. This is currently the best performing one. It's using the buffed Obliterate, okay, that's pretty sweet. It's using Farwatch Pose to try to make everyone else a little bit slower so that it has more time to react. But this one also has multiple weak card choices, like Blademaster Okani, for example. Blademaster Okani does not belong in any control deck, because you want to play that when you have board control, and then the opponent will struggle on how to remove that and play around the effect. But when you're playing the control deck, it's really bad. Don't play Blademaster Okani. Other than that, this is a decent enough deck. I mean, Sir Finley is also a little bit questionable. Okani is questionable. I'm not sure if Teotar is strong enough right now. So there are some things that could be improved with this list. But overall, this is still based on my original Theorycraft, and it's still doing quite okay. However, more people are playing with Blood Death Knight, the more apparent it becomes that the real win conditions of Blood Death Knight are Astral Bloodstone and Vampiric Blood. Vampiric Blood, you give yourself tons and tons of health, and Astalor to end games. So once you think about that, okay, well, I want Astalor and I want Vampiric Blood, then why do I use Renathal in the deck? So if you got Renathal, you can build a 30-card blood list, and 30-card blood list would look like this. This is currently the best performing 30-card blood list. This doesn't look like this has any such apparent weaknesses. It's just more like the matter of, is 30 card Blood really good enough at all? And I'm not sure. 30 card Blood seems to be somewhat playable, but it's still a little bit weaker than Renathal Blood, even after the Renathal nerf. So maybe there's not much to this, but we'll see. This is something that should probably be experimented with a little bit more. And then there is the one archetype, the one Death Knight archetype that has been experimented with a lot, that is currently the most popular Death Knight archetype, and that is Frost Death Knight. This is currently the best performing Frost Death Knight list, and the one important thing, compared to the most common build has like 20 times more games than any other build, you probably know that list already, is that all the more successful builds have one additional 1-drop. Typically, it is the Vicious Slither Spear, like in this one, and Vicious Slither Spear looks like the best option. Some decks are also using Iron Deep Trog, and Trog is weaker than Slither Spear, but still adding that additional 1-drop to the game plan of this deck makes it better compared to the most popular list. Some things that could be thought about is like Rhinefang Sword, Lady Death Whisper, are those really strong enough? But there isn't a ton of stuff that you can do about this deck. It's bursty, weaker Renathal means that you can just burn people down better, and it's a fairly strong deck. There's also a more OTK-oriented approach to this with Guild Traders. That approach seems to be slightly weaker than the just regular gameplay variant. This one is more refined than the Blood lists and the Unholy lists are being played on the ladder right now, and if you really want to win with Death Knight, then this is the Death Knight deck that you want to play. However, it would be really interesting to try to fine-tune those Unholy and Blood decks and see how good they can be when they're really properly fine-tuned. They won't be tier 1, but maybe they could be tier 2 or something. Anyway, if you want to play with Death Knight, these are the best decks to do so right now. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.